Hello, my name is Juan Jesus. Welcome to Central Park. I work as a guide for the Central Park Conservancy. We are a nonprofit organization entrusted with restoring, managing, and enhancing Central Park for everyone's enjoyment. Now, because getting here is not an option for so many right now, we here at the Conservancy are working to bring the park to you. Join us every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a virtual lunchtime stroll. Today, we'll be exploring the Hallett Nature Sanctuary in the southern section of the park. We'll be together for about 15 minutes. Most of the photos you'll be seeing here were taken by me within the last week. Before we get started, a bit of housekeeping. All participants are muted, but you can use the chat feature to say hello and comment. If you have a question, try using the Q&A feature. My colleagues Jose and Ian will be answering questions as we go along. You will also be invited to participate on a poll which will pop up on your screen during the program. I'll share the results once everyone has voted. This is the route we are going to walk. We begin looking at the Hallett from across a body of water called the pond. And we will finish over by the cascade inside the Hallett. We begin here, we'll be walking through, go inside the Hallett, make our way here, then backtrack and finish here at the cascade. The Hallett Nature Sanctuary is a 4-acre woodland on the southeastern end of Central Park, partially surrounded by a 3.5-acre pond. It's a hilly territory made mostly of Manhattan mica schist, the bedrock of Manhattan. There's just enough topsoil for lush vegetation made possible by careful management. The place features a handful of trails, allowing visitors to virtually escape the city's built environments, and there's even a cascade in there. Since the time this hilly and rocky landscape was developed in the second half of the 19th century, it proved difficult to manage. And in 1934, it was enclosed with a fence limiting public access and maintenance. The hope was that if left undisturbed, the landscape will take care of itself as it would in the wilderness and serve as a respite from human beings for birds and other wildlife. In 1986, the 4-acre preserve was named in honor of George Harvey Hallett Jr., a leading civic activist and ardent outdoor enthusiast. Prior to this landscape being developed in the bucolic vistas we enjoy today, this immediate area was known as Pigtown. Pigtown was marked by a natural stream called the Vore's Mill in the vicinity, which facilitated 19th century New Yorkers the ability to raise livestock. In this visual, you see a drawing depicting goats, chickens, and other farm animals. The year is 1856. The figure in black with the top hat is a New York official telling the lady that in about a year's time, she would have to vacate her property because the government had appropriated the land and was going to turn it into a park. Images like this one are very fun to explore because they give us a visual of what was here before the park. Unfortunately, as a result of enclosing the landscape in 1934, a lack of adequate management resulted in erosion, overgrowth of invasive species, and the deterioration of infrastructure. Exotic, decorative plants introduced in the early days of the park went on to become invasive and overly abundant, which created monocultures of only a few types of flora. In 2002, 2 of the trees in the sanctuary were found to be infested with the Asian Longhorn beetle. This 2002 event prompted the Conservancy to mobilize and begin a comprehensive restoration that would see this landscape restored and more accessible. The destructive Asian Longhorn beetle was first discovered in New York in 1996. Adult beetles are usually 1 and 1.5 inches long with shiny black coloring and random white spots on their bodies. These six-legged insects are named for their long, jointed antennae with white bands. Adults are most active between midsummer and fall. Larvae tunnel into the trees, cutting off the movement of watering nutrients, essentially killing the tree. Now, a lot of the work done to restore the Hallett was executed by a new youth program created in 2003 called ROOTS. ROOTS is an acronym and stands for Restoration of the Outdoors, organized by teen students. Teens from all over New York were instrumental in helping implement the restoration work in the Hallett. We are now going to walk along the southern edge of the pond to the Hallett's Cascade. Along the way, we'll encounter a very curious inhabitant. This is a raccoon near the promenade by the pond. Raccoons love it near the Hallett, and with the pond next to it, they have a very varied habitat. This is the largest kind of mammal that lives in Central Park. Although it cannot be seen very clearly here, there is water cascading from the top of these rocks. This image shows the view of the cascade from below. Standing on top, you can see grooves on the rock that allow for water to cascade down into the pond. We will make it to the top of the cascade at the end of our walk. We will now walk from the bottom of the cascade to the entrance to the Hallett. There are no cement or asphalt promenades inside the Hallett, only trails. Trails are not marked on maps. Now, before we proceed, time for the pool I mentioned. You will see it pop up on your screen. I'll leave it up for a couple of moments. The question is, have you visited the Hallett Nature Sanctuary before this virtual event? You can answer yes or no. All right, we have about 180 participants, and it looks like everyone or most everyone has voted. I will end the poll, and you will be able, and I will share the results momentarily. Now, this is the Rustic Gate marking the entrance to the Hallett Nature Sanctuary. It is the only access. To avoid excessive damage, park patrons can venture inside every day beginning at 10 a.m. and up until 30 minutes before sunset. We're going through the gate to experience in a 1-minute video the lush vegetation and the sounds of this special sanctuary just steps away from one of the busiest neighborhoods in Manhattan. The video will start looking south. All right, I hope everyone was able to see the video. You can always come back to the Conservancy's hashtag #MyCentralPark page to see this recording. Now let's share the results from that poll. Here we go. The question again was, have you visited the Hallett Nature Sanctuary before this virtual event? 60 of you, or about 35%, answered yes, welcome back. And about 110 of you, 65%, answered no. Those of you that haven't visited before, now you can say you sort of have, that you sort of have visited technically. Now we're going to walk along the trails. Again, the trails are not marked on the map, and I've made a sort of map that delineates where those trails are. The development of trails in the Hallett has taken place in phases. The first trails, starting in 2003, were constructed by Roots under the supervision of Conservancy staff. To make the trails, everything on the surface was removed from about a 4 to 6 foot swath, then shallow trenches were dug along the edges of the trail, and logs placed in them. Holes were then drilled into both ends of each log, and pieces of rebar, which are basically steel reinforcing rods, were inserted to secure the log to the ground. Finally, a 4 to 6 inch layer of wood chips was added. The current trails that we have been made by contractors as part of the most recent restoration project from 2015. These trails consist of processed wood chips that are installed on a permeable gravel base. An adhesive binder is placed on top of the surface of the wood chips to secure them, making them last longer and provide access to visitors on strollers and even wheelchairs. Most trails are on a gentle slope. Some are more challenging as they are somewhat steep. Along the trails, you can experience an important educational feature of the Hallett. Many plants are placed near it to allow for observation. Many are labeled with plaques, like this plantain sedge. Some of these plants appear only seasonally, but have root systems just below the thin layer of soil. And for this reason, it is especially important that everyone stay on the trails at all times while inside the Hallett. Now, from the trails, you can also have good visuals of the trees in here. Some are very tall, like these black cherry trees. This is a native tree that has gone on to become somewhat invasive through bird dispersal of their seeds. In fact, the black cherry tree is the most common tree in Central Park. Black cherry trees are distinctive for their potato chip looking bark. It's a kind of sort of flaky bark, but it doesn't come off too easily. It is also not uncommon to run into some of the permanent inhabitants of this oasis along the trails, like this squirrel. Look for this kind of traffic when visiting, but be cautious. They move surprisingly close to you. They also move very quickly. A recent squirrel census has indicated that there are over 2,700 squirrels living in Central Park. On to our next stop, which is going to take us to a dead tree. Now, logs and snags that can be seen in the Hallett serve ecological and educational purposes, and even more. Over 1/3 of woodland bird species, such as woodpeckers and some owls even, nest in holes or cavities in dead trees. And they rely on the insects and invertebrates found in dead wood as a food source. The decaying wood also plays a vital role in providing nutrients that young plants, fungi, and other microbes need to grow. It is not uncommon to see chipmunks these days running through these. This pin oak that you see laying here came down during Hurricane Sandy in 2012. Such display also provides visitors a sense of the transience of nature. The Hallett acts as a living laboratory in our programming for youth and families, as well as being a respite for visitors. Now let's get to the very top of the Hallett. Up here, we have one of the oldest trees in the park, an impressive hackberry tree. Before we get there, we're going to stop to look at a plaque along the trail. This plaque was installed in 2015 in honor of Marok and Iraj Sakai. Marok and Iraj were the parents of Sima Gadamian. Sima is of Iranian origin and is a dealer in rare gems who donated funds for the 2015 restoration. Sima said she heard about the Hallett after visiting a friend who had leukemia and soon died. She thought, I'm having such a hard time and I have a strong support system with family and friends. She thought how hard it is to be in New York and not have that, not have a place that someone could go. Through her generous contribution, this section of Central Park has now the quality of being a double sanctuary, a refuge for local wildlife and also a refuge for those experiencing the loss of a loved one, a true gem. This brings us to Hackberry Tree Overlook, a place of quiet, calm, and rest. The rustic features on this bench encircling the hackberry tree and the Hallett entrance gate, which we saw earlier, were constructed by Conservancy craftspeople. Many are made from black locust timber, as it is a highly rot-resistant wood. Notice how this arrangement allows for multiple groups to enjoy this setting. The Conservancy works gathering inspiration from original drawings and early photographs to bring back these important original features in order to enhance the visitor's experience and highlight the naturalistic setting and democratic character intended by the park's designers. While the Hallett provides an immersive experience, city views from particular spots like this overlook remind visitors that they are in an urban park that needs constant management and care. Now we move to our last stop and one of my other favorite features of the Hallett, and that is the cascade, which we saw earlier. This time will be at the top. Not to ruin the magic, but the source of the cascade is concealed pipes. Grooves were created on the rock for the water to travel down to the pond. This exemplifies the designed aspect of the park, even in the most naturalistic of settings. When I was here taking images for this virtual walk, I also collected some video footage of birds bathing at the top of this cascade. Here it is. All right, just a 30-second snippet. What you saw were starlings and sparrows flapping their wings and chirping as they cleansed their delicate feathers on the grooves on the rock where the water cascades down to the pond. The last video reminds us that the Hallett Nature Sanctuary exemplifies how even the most naturalistic habitats in Central Park require constant planning and care in order to thrive. Today, the Hallett is more diverse and healthier than ever, supporting various wildlife populations and providing an important multi-level respite for urban dwellers within just 4 acres of the park's 843. I want to thank you all for participating on today's virtual exploration of the Hallett Nature Sanctuary. Even though you might not be able to make it to the park right now, we hope that you've enjoyed this online event and learned more about this very special section of Central Park. Please check out our website for more virtual programming for the entire family. And also please share on social media using the hashtag #MyCentralPark. From the Central Park Conservancy, be safe and be well.